The morning Karen first drove up my driveway without warning or invitation was the moment I knew peace had officially packed its bags and left our once quiet neighborhood for good. I'd moved to the Timberlake Estates just 2 months prior. Tired of the cramped city life and constant noise, I was drawn to the woods, the fresh pine air, the peace. My property was the last house on the ridge, about 5 acres bordering national forest land, with no reason for anyone to come by unless they were lost or invited. The listing was clear: no HOA, private land, and legally mined to the bedrock. So you can imagine my surprise when a mid-50s woman with helmet blonde hair and an expression like she'd smelled something offensive drove up in a pristine white Lexus, rolled down her tinted window and barked, "You can't leave that trailer. Here." There wasn't a greeting, no introduction, just an order, loud and shrill. I blinked, looked around, and realized she meant the covered utility trailer parked beside my garage, neatly locked and tagged. "Excuse me?" I asked. She flared her nostrils like a bull. "You heard me. This is Timberlake Estates. We have standards, and you need to have that eyesore gone by tonight. This is a warning." That's when she introduced herself. Karen Whitmore, president of the Timberlake Homeowners Association, and she did it with the pomp of royalty, as if I should bow. I calmly told her that my property was not within HOA jurisdiction. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "That's what the last owner thought," she hissed. "But you'll learn." Then she reversed her SUV, tires spitting gravel across my lawn, and drove off with the hiss of a tyrant denied. That night, I did some digging and confirmed it again. My property was on grandfathered land, the original plot before the HOA formed in the late 90s. I was immune to their nonsense, or so I thought. What I didn't know was that Karen made it her personal crusade to bring order to anyone not under her thumb. Over the next week, I noticed strange things. My mailbox was knocked over twice. Someone filed a complaint with the county claiming I was running an unlicensed business from my garage. I found flyers about HOA meetings stuck to my door, even though I wasn't a member. And then there was the incident with my dog, Ripley. She's a calm German shepherd, sweet with everyone, but one morning she was howling in pain in the backyard. Someone had thrown raw meat laced with glass into her fenced run. The vet said she was lucky. That was the day I decided to fight back. I installed motion-activated cameras, ordered a dash of legal reinforcement, a laminated printout of my deed, on a board at the front gate, and began planning something more mechanical. See, I wasn't just some guy with a truck and a trailer. I was an engineer, specifically a former DoD contractor who'd built all kinds of devices in his time. And I had plans, blueprints, and a workshop full of components that most people wouldn't recognize. I didn't want to hurt Karen, no, just send a message that even she couldn't ignore. I started with a steel-reinforced gate, fully legal, fully within my right. But the genius was in the hydraulic lift system beneath it. If someone, say an uninvited HOA president in her pristine SUV, tried to cross it while armed sensors detected unauthorized entry, the system would engage. A fast-acting piston would lift the gate like a springboard. Not enough to cause real harm, just enough to give them a very expensive lesson in physics. And for 2 weeks, nothing happened. No Karen, no threats. I thought maybe she'd gotten bored. But then came the morning I watched the footage. My coffee halfway to my lips, of Karen ramming the gate with her Lexus at 6:17 a.m., lights off, trying to catch me unaware. She must have thought she'd force it open, maybe teach me a lesson. What she got was a full hydraulic launch. Her SUV hit the ramp at just the right angle. The lift engaged, tires left the ground, and the whole vehicle arced like a toy flung by a giant child, crashing in a cartoonish heap into my gravel turnabout. Airbags deployed, horn blaring. She stumbled out unhurt but dazed, mascara smudged, one heel broken, shrieking about lawsuits and murder. I stepped out calmly, holding the deed in one hand and a mug in the other. "Karen," I said evenly, "you were trespassing. I have video. I suggest you leave while your insurance still covers you." That incident should have been the end, but it wasn't. Because Karen didn't go away quietly. She declared war, and I wasn't about to surrender. That was just the beginning. That was chapter 1. Karen didn't take her airborne SUV lesson with grace or humility. No, she took it as a declaration of war, and what followed was nothing short of a suburban siege campaign worthy of a war novel, if that novel were co-authored by Kafka and a petty dictator. Less than 24 hours after the hydraulic gate made national headlines on a local news blooper reel, Karen's Lexus being catapulted was too dramatic for the internet to ignore. I found myself receiving calls from code enforcement, animal control, zoning board officials, and even a local fire marshal, all apparently responding to urgent complaints from an anonymous but concerned citizen. I played nice, calmly inviting each official onto my property, showing them my documents, permits, and even offering coffee to the few who didn't arrive with an attitude. Each time, the result was the same: no violations found. But the visits came daily, almost comically predictable. When I spotted Karen hiding in her car one afternoon with a pair of binoculars and a notepad, I decided it was time to escalate. But not with revenge. With strategy. I began documenting everything. Recording every conversation, logging every visit, building a thick digital dossier with time-stamped entries and videos. My lawyer, retained after the dog poisoning incident, assured me that the legal groundwork was solid. But Karen didn't need laws. She had the HOA, and her next tactic was the most brazen yet. She called an emergency community vote to annex my property into the Timber Lake Estates, HOA. Now, legally, this was nonsense. My lot was surveyed and recorded long before the HOA formed, and annexation would require a change in bylaws, municipal approval, and most critically, my consent. But Karen, never one to be deterred by legality, held the vote anyway in the middle school gym. I went, naturally. She stood at the front with a projector showing my driveway as a growing threat to community harmony, referencing my militarized gate, my constant construction noise, read home renovation, and my menacing German shepherd. She even played a slowed-down clip of Ripley barking, edited to sound like a beast from a horror film. I stood and asked if I could respond. She said, "You're not part of this community, sir." The irony was delicious. But the vote passed, 29-3, and she declared that the HOA would begin enforcing regulations on my property. I laughed. That night, the first notice was taped to my mailbox, a $750 fine for unauthorized structure, my garden shed. I took a photo, peeled it off, and filed it in my growing evidence binder. I didn't pay a cent. Instead, I installed a second hydraulic system. This one a little more subtle, integrated with a driveway pressure pad and a license plate scanner. Karen tried to sneak onto my land again the next week, this time on foot, wearing yoga pants and a baseball cap like she was going for a jog. When the system blared a warning and began recording in infrared, she turned tail and ran like she'd seen a ghost. But the real game changer came when I received a manila envelope in the mail. No return address, just the words, "She did it. To us, too." Inside were letters, emails, and printouts from former residents of Timber Lake Estates, detailing Karen's years-long reign of terror. She'd fined an elderly couple into bankruptcy over their porch paint color. She'd sued a disabled veteran for leaving his trash can visible from the street. She'd even tried to force a single mom to sell her house because her teenage son played drums in the garage. I compiled it all into a single PDF file, the Karen dossier, and sent it to a local investigative reporter who'd covered the original gate launch incident. Within 72 hours, the piece went live. HOA president accused of harassment, financial abuse, and trespassing. The fallout was nuclear. The mayor issued a statement. The county launched an investigation. Karen vanished from public view, But her supporters didn't. They doubled down, launching what I began calling the passive-aggressive blitz. Bags of dog feces tossed at my mailbox, a dead raccoon nailed to my fence, my trash bin stolen, and replaced with a note reading, "Pig." I endured it all, recorded it all, reported it all. And then came the lawsuit. Karen, still defiant even as public opinion turned against her, filed a civil suit claiming intentional humiliation and vehicular sabotage. Her attorney must have been desperate for a paycheck because the complaint read like a sitcom script, that I'd engineered the gate specifically to attack her, that I'd been stalking her online, that I ran a survivalist compound, her words, on the edge of Timber Lake and was plotting to undermine community governance. My lawyer and I laughed so hard reading it, I almost forgot it was real. We countersued for trespassing, malicious prosecution, and emotional distress. While the court dates loomed, I decided to use the attention for good. I started a YouTube channel, The Anti-Karen Chronicles. It featured my side of the story, interviews with other victims of her reign, and tips on standing up to HOA tyranny. The channel exploded. Within weeks, I had 200,000 subscribers, a Patreon account, and emails from across the country thanking me. Karen, meanwhile, had gone completely silent. Her house sat dark, her car gone. Rumor had it she was staying with a sister in Nevada. But I wasn't celebrating yet. People like Karen don't go away quietly. They plot, they wait, and sometimes they come back with reinforcements. I knew Chapter 2 of our saga was ending, but war was still on the horizon, and I was ready. 3 months of silence passed, and I allowed myself to believe just for a moment that the storm had passed, that Karen Whitmore had been vanquished, driven off by the glare of public shame and the threat of civil court. My driveway was quiet again. The cameras needed fewer memory cards. Ripley was healing from her incident and no longer skittish at shadows, and the gate, the now infamous hydraulic launcher, was turned off, locked in standby, serving mostly as a monument to suburban resistance. My YouTube channel, The Anti-Karen Chronicles, had gained national traction, and I was even invited to speak on a podcast about neighborhood rights and homeowner freedoms. Life was stable again, or at least it was, until the drones arrived. The first one buzzed above my garden one sunny afternoon, hovering long enough to catch Ripley's attention. She barked, I looked up, and it zipped away into the tree line like a mechanical hornet on a recon mission. I assumed it was a curious kid from a few houses down. But the second drone came at night, hovering with infrared. The third one dropped leaflets, actual printed flyers, onto my lawn that read, "Your time is up. Community standards will be enforced." And that was when I knew. Karen was back. But this time she was smarter. She didn't show up personally, didn't storm onto my land or leave screeching voicemails. No, this version of Karen was tactical, detached, and worse, backed by a legal team. The first salvo came in the form of a cease and desist letter from a law firm based in Sacramento. It claimed I was unlawfully defaming a respected community official, interfering with HOA operations, and encouraging online harassment against a private citizen. Attached were screenshots from my YouTube channel, clips where I recounted her SUV's flight over my driveway, dramatically set to Flight of the Valkyries, and interviews with neighbors who shared their own horror stories. I sent the letter to my attorney, who nearly choked on his coffee laughing. "There's more fiction in this cease and desist than in Harry Potter," he said. We drafted a response, a legally sound, brutally clear rejection of all claims, and sent it back along with a formal request for Karen to stay at least 500 feet from my property. That should have been the end. Instead, it was the beginning of a psychological war. My mailbox began overflowing with legal documents, each more absurd than the last. Claims that my driveway floodlights were causing light pollution, that my House was in visual violation of neighborhood aesthetic standards, that my wind chimes were an auditory hazard. Then came the surprise property assessment, ordered by the county under pressure from a suspiciously large number of complaints. The assessor, a kind woman named Linda, told me flat out, "Someone is pulling strings, but everything here is up. To code. You're clean." But Karen wasn't just attacking through paper and drones. She had recruited allies, a trio of HOA loyalists who began showing up at my gate, clipboards in hand, demanding to conduct wellness inspections. I refused each time, documented everything, and posted a running log online. My subscribers dubbed them the Stepford Squad. But the real blow came not through my front gate, but through a different front, the bank. One morning, I got a call from my mortgage lender. They'd received anonymous complaints questioning the structural safety of my garage, and my home insurance had been flagged. Then came an investigation from Child Protective Services. Someone claimed I was endangering young children by operating explosive devices, i.e., the hydraulic gate. I don't have kids. I don't even babysit. It was all harassment, dressed in the robes of bureaucracy. I was being paper-cut to death. That night I called an emergency live stream on my channel titled, "The Drone War Has Begun." I laid everything out, the harassment, the lawsuits, the drone footage, the Stepford Squad, even the fake CPS report. The stream hit 1.2 million. Views in 24 hours. Donations poured in. A nonprofit lawyer team volunteered to assist. And one viewer, a tech-savvy drone enthusiast from Colorado, offered to send a defense drone, autonomous, equipped with non-lethal countermeasures. I accepted. The next time Karen's drone showed up, mine launched automatically, caught it mid-hover, and jammed its signal before dropping it softly into my tomato patch. I salvaged the memory card, encrypted, but my friend decrypted it. On it were videos, of not just my house, but multiple homes in the area. Karen was spying on half the neighborhood. I sent it to the sheriff. Within a week, an official investigation was opened. Karen's lawyers dropped their case, and then, just when I thought the tide was turning, she showed up in person, dressed in black, standing just outside my property. "Line like a cartoon villain," she screamed. "You've turned everyone against me. I built this neighborhood." Her voice cracked. For a moment, I almost saw the human under the tyranny, a lonely woman whose need for control had become her entire identity. But then she added, "You'll regret ever buying this house," and stormed away, tires screeching. I didn't sleep that night. Something had changed. Karen wasn't just angry now. She was desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. I strengthened the fence, upgraded the cameras, rearmed the hydraulic gate, not to launch, but to lock down, and I waited. Chapter 3 had ended, but the finale was looming. Karen wasn't done, and neither was I. The final chapter of my war with Karen didn't begin with a bang, but with a whisper, a simple envelope, no return address, slid under my garage door one rainy morning. Inside was a single photo, an aerial image of my home, taken by drone, circled in red with an X over it. On the back, scrawled in black Sharpie, were the words, "You don't belong here." I stood in the quiet garage, staring at the message while the rain tapped the roof like fingers drumming before a storm. It wasn't fear I felt. It was confirmation. Karen had lost the war in every official way, but she hadn't accepted defeat. Her public support had crumbled, her lawsuit was dropped, the HOA was under county review, and yet she still clung to the belief that my mere presence in Timberlake Estates was a threat to her imagined utopia. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't comprehend, was that I was done playing defense. I was going on offense. My preparations began that day. I upgraded my perimeter systems, installed a ground-level seismic sensor grid, hired a private investigator to gather intelligence on Karen's whereabouts, and prepped my server to live stream 24/7. My subscribers, now over 500,000 strong, helped too, crowdsourcing every HOA document, backroom email, and public record they could find. We built a digital dossier so deep it made the original Karen dossier look like a pamphlet. And then the break came. My PI returned with a gold mine. Karen had been secretly buying property just outside HOA jurisdiction under an LLC, planning to build a private community, Whitmore Hills, with herself as permanent president. She was trying to recreate Timber Lake without any legal oversight, hoping to attract only the most obedient residents. She wasn't just petty, she was building a kingdom. I leaked the documents online, careful and surgical, and within hours, the story exploded. Local news, national HOA reform groups, even a city council member got involved. Karen had used HOA funds to bankroll her private development. She was being investigated for misappropriation of dues, illegal surveillance, and targeted harassment. But none of it stopped her. Because just when I thought she might flee again, she escalated in the only way she had left, direct confrontation. It happened on a Sunday night. I was in my living room when the power suddenly cut. Backup batteries kicked in, and my security monitors flickered to life. Two figures in hooded ponchos had cut through my eastern fence, ducking between trees, flashlights off. I recognized her posture instantly. Even in the dark, Karen moved, with that same tight-shouldered arrogance. I hit the loudspeaker. "You are trespassing on private property. Law enforcement has been notified." One of them bolted. Karen didn't. She kept coming. I activated the floodlights, blinding the front acre. Ripley was barking like hell. I stepped outside, phone recording, and met her just before the gravel path curved toward the gate. She was soaked, mascara smeared, and holding a hammer. "You're a disease," she hissed. "You infected this place. You ruined it." I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just pointed behind her to the sheriff's cruiser pulling into the driveway, lights strobing through the trees. Karen spun and ran, but she didn't make it past the gate. The hydraulic system locked down, sealed shut, and when she tried to climb over, she slipped in the rain and twisted her ankle with a scream. The deputy cuffed her on the spot. She shouted every insult in the book, called it her neighborhood, accused me of brainwashing the town. She was booked for trespassing, attempted vandalism, and resisting arrest. The hammer in her hand, evidence, and the footage, broadcast live to over 100,000 viewers. The next few weeks passed like a victory lap. Karen resigned from the HOA under threat of prosecution. Her secret development stalled, and the county voted to dissolve and restructure the entire Timber Lake HOA from the ground up. A local nonprofit took over, one focused on resident rights and transparency. I was asked to serve on the advisory board. I declined politely. I'd had enough politics for a lifetime. Instead, I stayed on my land, fixed the eastern fence, deactivated the hydraulic gate, though I kept the core intact, just in case, and spent my mornings walking Ripley through the woods without needing to check my cameras every 5 minutes. But the world didn't forget. My channel became a hub for HOA resistance stories. I published a book. A producer even reached out about a mini-series. Karen? She moved out of state. Last I heard, she was suing a farmer in Montana over tractor noise. Some people never learn. But for me, peace had finally returned. I had defended my home not just with steel and censors, but with truth, humor, and a stubborn refusal to bow to tyranny. I didn't go looking for a fight. But when the HOA queen came crashing down my driveway, I made damn sure she remembered. Some gates don't open, they launch. And some neighbors, they fight back.